Bring the Senate to order on this February 3rd, 2021. Roll call, please. Senate Chief Clerk.
Roll call for Wednesday, February the 3rd. Anderson?
Excused.
Excused. Baldwin?
Here.
Beitman?
Here.
Boner?
Here.
Bouchard?
Excused.
Case?
Present.
Cooper?
Here.
Driscoll?
Here.
Ellis?
Present.
French?
Here.
Murphy?
Here.
Garou?
Here.
Hicks?
Excused.
Excused. Hutchings?
I'm here, just having
Jane.
trouble with audio.
Here.
James? Kinski?
Here.
Kolb?
He's here.
Kolb present. Cost?
Here.
Landon?
Here.
McCune?
Excused.
Excused. Nettercott?
Here.
Pappas?
Here.
Perkins?
Excused. Oh, there he is.
Here.
Rothfuss?
Here.
Salazar?
Here.
Schuler?
Here.
Scott?
Here.
Steinmetz?
Here.
Wasserberger?
Here.
And President Dockstetter.
Here. Before we go to the prayer, we're having Pastor Dustin Devos join us today. Pastor, could you introduce yourself to the Senate, please, before we have the prayer?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone again. For those who I've met before, I just wanted to say that last year I missed my time there with you. I was supposed to be there for a week. And as many of you remember, I had to emergency go to Michigan to be with my ailing father. I just want to say thank you to so many of you that reached out to me afterwards to check on me and to check on my dad. It just showed the great kindness of our state and our senator leaders. And I am so thankful for that. So it's great to be here this morning. But I'm from Baggs, Wyoming, and I am Pastor Larry Hicks's pastor. So, you know, that should tell you a lot.
We hope you can do good work with Senator Hicks, Pastor.
And you have our sympathy.
I'm doing my best.
All right, thank you. Appreciate you joining us. Let's stand for the prayer, and then we'll have Senator Cooper get us started with the pledge right after that.
Let us pray. Most gracious and heavenly Father, I come to you this day and I ask you to superintend through the Holy Spirit over those who are here and within the sound of my voice as those serving in the high calling of public service. It is our hope, yea, our need, Father, that you would direct our hearts towards you in righteousness and moral conduct to fulfill the calling as public servants in a manner that honors you and cares for the citizens of this great state. You proclaim, Lord, in your holy word that your children should eagerly seek unity in the bond of peace, knowing that this call is needed because we are all different people with different views and different understandings, and understanding that the road to unity can be steep and difficult. We ask you to let us have hope that does not disappoint. For if we are redeemed by you and in your Son, Jesus, then the unity and the bond of peace is achievable. Lord, we know and understand that this unity is hard to reach within the body of Christ, and even more so when we are not unified in our beliefs and we do not heed your call and your warnings to follow you in faith and repentance. So let us each now examine our souls, Lord. Through your Spirit, let us see and claim all of our own iniquities so that we may confess it, repent of it, and believe in your gospel so that we may achieve this unity. Lastly, Father, as we seek diligently to live out this unity, may those of us who have been redeemed by the atoning work of the Lord Jesus remember that we are to live this way. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in our own sight. Repay no one for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all. And if possible, as far as it depends on us, let us live peaceably with all. Lord Jesus, I pray that your peace the peace that passes understanding would come over this legislature this day and in the days to come, so that the governing authority that has been given to those who serve by the people of Wyoming would be exercised in a way that fulfills the calling upon civil government, which you have ordained from the throne above. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.
Pastor Senator Cooper.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the
of the
United States
of
of America
America.
and to the republic,
For which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice.
justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor, for joining us. All the best. Reading, correction, approval of the journal. Will Chief Clerk please read the Journal Committee report?
Mr. President, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of February 2nd, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Signed, John Cole, Chairman.
Are there any objections? There being none, report is adopted. Reports from standing committees. Chief Clerk.
February 2nd, 2021. Mr. President, your committee number 2, to whom was referred House Bill 44 engrossed, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Garreau, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members of the Senate, this is where we're going to move things around just a little bit. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard that motion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Senator Ellis, you're now presiding over the Senate.
Committee of the Whole will please come to order. Just one moment, Senators, while I get a little organized myself.
No problem. Would you like to just stand at ease for a moment?
No, here we go. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 44, the Omnibus Water Bill. The clerk will read House Bill 44.
House Bill 44, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, an act relating to water development projects, sponsored by Select Water. It was referred to your committee number 5, Agriculture, State, Public Lands and Water Resources, who returned a do pass amended recommendation. Voting aye, Senators Boner, Bouchard, French, Cost, and Wasserberger. It was also considered by your committee number 2, Appropriations, who returned a do pass recommendation. Voting aye, Senators Garreau, Hicks, Kinsky, Perkins, and Steinmetz. Signed, Drew Perkins, Chairman.
You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure? Senator Boner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report, do so with a favorable recommendation on House Bill 44. There are 2 technical amendments, one of which is a standing committee amendment. I ask that that be read in at this time.
Will the reading clerk please read the amendment?
House Bill 44, Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 11, line 22.
Thank you. Senator Boner?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I ask that to explain this bill, you call on the good senator from Gillette.
All righty. Senator Wasserberger? Oh, you're muted, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members of the 66th Senate, I bring you House Bill 44 Omnibus Water Bill Construction and ask for your favorable support. I'm going to briefly introduce the bill and then turn the bill over to the good senator from Carbon County who sits on the Select Water Committee to explain whatever I might have missed. First, briefly, a little bit about the Wyoming Water Development Program, which is overseen by a 10-member Wyoming Water Development Commission, which is called the WWDC. Commission members are appointed by the governor and the Senate approves those members. There's 2 members from each water division, and one of those has to have adjudicated water rights, 1 member at large from the state, and then there's 1 member from the Arapaho or Shoshone Indian tribe. The Water Development Commission has a great deal of oversight by the legislative branch. The Legislature's Select Water Committee has 12 members consisting of 6 senators and 6 House members. The committee sponsors the Omnibus Planning and Omnibus Construction bills in the legislative session. The Wyoming Water Development Office is the agency charged with carrying out the duties and responsibilities of the Water Development Program. They have 25 employees and the director is appointed by the governor. The agency has 4 operating divisions: administration, planning, construction, and dams and reservoirs. The Wyoming Water Development Program has 9 major responsibilities: new water project development, rehabilitation of existing water projects, dams and reservoirs, water resource planning, which involves the preparation of watershed plans, the state's river basin plans, and the state's water framework plan. Groundwater exploration grant program, which is drilling exploration water wells that could possibly be used later. Management of water investments, which includes the operation of the High Savory Dam, and management of water storage accounts that have been acquired in Pathfinder, Buffalo Bill, Glendo, Fontenelle, and Palisades. The Wyoming Water Development Commission also holds all in-stream flow water permits for the state of Wyoming. There's small water projects, which has a limit of $35,000 per project. Colorado River Basin State Salinity Control Program. And then also, finally, emergency water projects, which provides emergency funding for eligible irrigation infrastructure that has been rendered or is likely to be rendered permanently inoperable. The Wyoming Water Development Commission is funded by distributions from the severance tax distribution account. These separate distributions are made to 3 water development counts. Water account 1, which is new development at 12.45%, not to exceed $19.3 million per year. Water account 2, which is rehabilitation, it's 2.1%, not to exceed $3.2 million per year. And water account 3, dams and reservoirs, 0.5%, not to exceed $775,000. Our emergency water account has about $5 million in it. Each water account is maintained separately of the other 2 accounts to fund the different category of projects. In addition to new development projects, water account 1 also funds planning, groundwater exploration, and the agency's operational budget. Each Wyoming Water Development Commission project generally moves through 3 levels of review and funding. Project 1, which is, or level 1, which is projects are studied to determine the needs and priorities and costs. Level 2, the sponsor has selected a particular project to pursue. This study performs a comprehensive feasibility study of the project and develops a detailed cost estimate. Level 3, the final level, the project design, permitting, land acquisition, and construction are completed. The Wyoming Water Development Commission and the Select Water Committee, with 6 senators and 6 representatives, meet in November to consider project applications. The staff writes the omnibus planning and construction bills based on the WDC's preliminary recommendations. In January, the WDC meets to finalize their recommendations in the form of the omnibus planning and construction bills. And then the Select Water Committee works the bills and the legislature ultimately passes those bills. There are several ways of typical project funding. There's level 1 studies, which the WDC funds 100% of the project costs. Level 2 feasibility studies, which the WWDC funds 100% project costs, and level 3 design and construction projects. Most of these grant and loan packages are offered to the project sponsors. That is typically a 67% grant, a 33% loan with a 4% interest rate and the term of up to 50 years. Small water projects are limited to $35,000. Groundwater exploration grants, maximum financial participation of the program is $400,000, with the sponsor providing 25% of the total costs. And emergency water projects, which maximum amount awarded for this account shall not exceed $3 million per fiscal biennium. Essentially, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, that is the system that we use to appropriate funds for water in the state of Wyoming. I'm now going to walk you through the bill. I sent to the Senate an email yesterday with information on the Wyoming Water Development Commission. On the second page of that attachment is a cheat sheet on House Bill 44 Omnibus Water Bill Construction. And I will walk you through that cheat sheet at this time and then turn the bill over to the Senator for Carbon County senators. As you look at this cheat sheet, let us quickly go through the bill. On page 2, actually under tab C on page 2, is cloud seeding for the Medicine Bow Sierra Madre ranges, and that's in Albany and Carbon County. That's expenditure is out of water account 1 for $728,000, and that's for snowpack augmentation. At tab D, bill page 4, cloud seeding on the Wind River range, and that's in Fremont and Sublette counties for $215,000 out of water account 1. And that's snowpack augmentation. At tab E, page 6, water well and transmission pipeline the Lander well and transmission pipeline 2021. That's in Fremont County for $884,400. And that's a 67% grant, and that's a pipeline. Tab F at page 8 of the bill, Northwest Rural Water System Improvements in Park County for $1.4 million, and that's a 67% grant in pipeline, and that's for a pipeline. Finally, on page 9, the Torrington well connection, that's in Goshen County for $389,000, and that's a 67% grant. Pipelines, and that's a pipeline, and the total expenditure for pages 2 through 9 is $3.6 million. Continuing on, level 2 projects rehabilitation at tab H and page 11 of your bill, interstate irrigation and reservoir irrigation district improvements. That's in Sweetwater County. That is a water account 2 appropriation for $2.8 million. It's a 67% grant, and it is a pipeline. At tab I, at page 13, Salt Creek Transmission Pipeline 2021, that's in Natrona County, and that's a $7.3 million appropriation out of water account 2. That's a 67% grant, and that's a pipeline. And if you look down at the bottom of the page, you will see a note that says project appropriation is subject to the transfer of funds from Water Development 1 to Water Development Account 2, and that is at the very bottom of your sheet where it says tab R, page 26, transfer of funds for $7.5 million, and that's statewide. It's a $7.5 million transfer from Water Account 1 to Water Account 2, and that's in the bill on page 26. Continuing on at page 15 is the Shoshone ID improvements, and that's in Park County for $240,000. That's a materials only grant, and that's also contingent on the transfer of funds from Water Account 1 to Water Account 2. At page 17, Sidon ID Rehab 2021, and that's in Bighorn County, and that's for $576,000. That's a materials only grant, and that's for a pipeline. Total expenditure for page 11 through 17 is 10.9, almost $11 million. Continuing on, level 3 projects amendments at tab L, page 20. Sponsors Contingency Fund, account 2, and that's statewide. That's a water account 2 expenditure for $1.5 million, and that's for contingency. At tab M, page 21, Ethody Water Supply Project, and that's on the Wind River Reservation. We're going to give that project within the bill a 2-year time extension, and that's for a new well and pipelines. At page 21, small water project program, and that's new development in the water account 1. That's $1 million, and that's a 50% max grant, and that's for small water projects, and that's new developments. On page 23, small water projects program rehabilitation, and that's statewide. That's coming out of water account 2 for $500,000, and that's a 50% max grant, and that's small water program rehab. And so remember, those programs can't exceed the cost of $35,000. At page 25, Arapahoe Water Supply 2016 project, that's on the Wind River Reservation, and we're giving a 3-year time extension for pipelines. At page 26, the Sheridan Area Water Supply Transmission 2020. Essentially, all we are doing there is changing the name of the sponsor, and the sponsor will now be the City of Sheridan. At page 26, Lands Creek Water and Sewer District well, that's in Niobrara County, my home county, and I actually know where this well is, and it's in a very remote spot of Wyoming. We are transferring the Lands Creek Water well, and we're going to sell that well to someone locally. And then finally, on page 26, the transfer of funds that we talked about, we're going to move $7.5 million from the water account 1 to water account 2. And at this time, Madam Chairman, I would take up Standing Committee Amendment number 1, which Chairman Boner moved previously. And essentially it is a technical correction on page 11, line 22. We are just deleting improvements in the title.
Call for the question.
Excuse me. Point of order. Madam Chairwoman, I don't believe the amendment was moved.
Madam Chairman.
Madam Chief Clerk. Senator Wasserman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I would move Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 44. It is a technical correction offered to us by the agency, and would ask for your favorable support.
Is there any discussion on the amendment?
Question.
Seeing none, the motion, or excuse me, all those in favor of Standing Committee Amendment number 1 to House Bill 44, please raise your hand to the screen. Madam Chief Clerk, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All those opposed? Seeing no opposition, the amendment has passed. We're back on the bill. Senator Wasserberger.
Madam Chairman, I would defer to the good senator from Converse County to do his Committee of the Whole amendment.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I ask that Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 44 be read in at this time.
Just a correction, Senator, is it a Committee of the Whole Amendment? Or yep, it is a Committee of the Whole Amendment. My apologies.
House Bill 44, Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to engross copy, page 23, line 10.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I move Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 44. Ladies and gentlemen, what this does is simply goes in and adds another technical correction. You'll see there is a missing A in a statutory reference on page 23. I'll stand for any questions. If not, I call for the question.
Any discussion on the amendment? Question's been called. All those in favor of Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 44, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Please lower your hand. All those opposed to the amendment, please raise your hand. Seeing no opposition, the amendment passes. We're back on the bill. Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I've walked you quickly through the bill. I do have some questions for the good senator from Carbon County. There was a part in the bill where it talks about water storage on the North Platte River and the discussion between the Select Water Committee and the Department of Public Utilities, which is the City of Cheyenne. And if the good senator from Carbon County who sits on that committee could explain that to me. There was about 2 pages of information about that issue in the email that I sent out to you. And I'm not real sure that I understand it, but I would ask the good senator from Carbon County to tell me what happened there.
So do you want the, Madam Chairman?
Senator
Do you
Hicks.
want the short version or the really, really long version? I think I get the picture. We'll go with the short version. So as part of the litigation between the state of Nebraska and the state of Wyoming, and in which the state of Colorado intervened over allocations of the North Platte River, that wall was adjudicated through a special master appointed by the Supreme Court. But as part of that adjudication of that decision, what resulted in is Wyoming had to, at some point in time, pay into an account, which we are still doing, for which the byproduct of the states litigating was the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service then filed motions under the Endangered Species Act for 3 endangered species in the middle section of the North Platte River. Fast forward, prior to the Pathfinder modification project, the state of Wyoming was required to supply so much, about $3 million to the what they would call the PRIP, the Platte River Recovery Implementation Program for endangered species, and then also supply some additional water. Prior to the Pathfinder mitigation project, the agreement was that the city of Cheyenne has a trans-basin diversion in the Sierra Madres that moves water over the hill. That as a result of that North Platte settlement, that the city of Cheyenne, if they had excess water that they could divert out of the Colorado River Basin into the Platte River Basin, then that would go into an account in Seminole Reservoir that then the state of Wyoming, even though it was the city of Cheyenne's account, the state of Wyoming through the Water Development Commission could offer that water for marketing to reduce any impacts or reductions to diversions by Wyoming users. Once the North Platte modification project was constructed on Pathfinder Dam, the state of Wyoming then had a 30,000 acre pool there that they could offset any use by North Platte water users and comply with the Platte River Implementation Program. And so consequently, since that project's been in place for over 10 years now, that contractual obligation between the state of Wyoming and the city of Cheyenne is no longer necessary. Basically, what we were doing is we were paying for space in Seminole Reservoir in the city of Cheyenne's account up to $25,000 a year. So we haven't used that for over 10 years. So the language in the bill, and we, Water Development worked directly with the city of Cheyenne. They basically agreed to terminate that agreement. It's a contractual agreement that went out to 2035, but where the state is no longer needs that water and the city of Cheyenne could work within their operating budget, that component now goes in there and basically allows for the provision upon mutual agreement of both parties to extinguish that agreement between the Water Development Commission, who has been leasing that space in Seminole from the city of Cheyenne, and terminate that agreement. I hope that's an explanation to a very long, protracted, complicated water discussion.
Thank you, Senator Hicks. Further discussion on the bill? Senator Schuler?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a quick question on page 4. It was on the cloud seeding, the Medicine Bow Mountains. We see cloud seeding quite a bit over here with our neighbors to the west. It's pretty successful. But there was one part on page 4, section A, that just kind of piqued my interest when I was looking at this bill last night. And it talks about acquiring funding commitments from water users or other parties for operational costs which may exceed appropriations. And so first of all, I just wonder, do we anticipate shortfalls? And then secondly, how do you obtain those? How does the Water Development Office obtain those interested parties jumping on board and helping out with operational costs? Thank you very much, Madam Chairman.
Further discussion, Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, so on page 4, and I think it was just for edification, that's cloud seeding in the Wind River range. I think that's, you said the Medicine Bow, but page 4 is the cloud seeding program. And with those other operational agreements that other organizations pay, there's an agreement through this is part of the Colorado River system that some of the other basin states pay into this account. Right now, I think Wyoming only pays about, and don't hold me to these numbers, but it's somewhere between 12 and 20% of the total costs of the program. Bureau of Reclamation is paying into that. Some of the other basin states, and the concept behind that is to try to keep the Colorado River from going on a regulatory call and a curtailment that would trigger that. And so Wyoming's participation is less than many of the other states. So they do have a contractual agreement with other entities. I believe they still have the Bureau of Reclamation involved, several other of the states, and I think one, or maybe one power generating company. But they seed those to try to do snowpack augmentation, to put a little more water in the system to help avert a regulatory call on the Colorado is the lower basin states calling out the upper basin states. And so I hope that provides edification on that issue.
Further discussion, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. I'd like to return to the issue of the agreement with the city of Cheyenne. I'm not sure I entirely understand what's happening here. I do know from history that there was several attempts at stages to achieve a trans-basin diversion to assure a water supply for the city of Cheyenne, which, as I recall, was kind of forecast to need a lot more water than they eventually did. They're certainly growing again, and I know that. But it was tied up in dam projects and it was pretty significant when you take water from one basin to another. And there's also implications for the Colorado River, as of course we've been talking, and whether this claim that Cheyenne had to the Colorado River water, or it's just a whole can of worms, and maybe not a can of worms, but my head's exploding, and I hope we get some more explanation what the implications are for our Colorado Basin obligations, the future of the city of Cheyenne and their water supply, and a little bit more detail, please.
Thank you. Senator, we don't want your head to explode. Who would like to respond to that question?
Madam Chairman, so I think Senator Case highlights the old saying here in Wyoming that whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting. And, if you've been around a lot of water wars over fighting and water in the state of Wyoming, without going into a very detailed discussion, there is a trans-basin diversion that was constructed in the 80s. The city of Cheyenne has a water right in the Little Snake River Basin for just a little under 20,000 acre-feet of water. And that pipeline was constructed through a series of multiple projects, but kind of finished sometime in the early 80s. The idea was within the North Platte Basin, everything's already appropriated fully. That's why we ended up in a lawsuit. It was to try to find for our, at that time, fastest growing city in the state of Wyoming, was to make sure that they had reliable water supplies to do that. $1980, it was somewhere around, I want to say 100 million plus, maybe 120, $160 million project. Not dissimilar to the Gillette-Madison project, a very large pipeline, except for they actually dump this water over the Continental Divide. Goes into Hog Park Reservoir, goes from Hog Park Reservoir down the Encampment River. City of Cheyenne has an account in Seminole Reservoir too. That's where this agreement was to store any surplus water that the city had. But at the time when that happened, because of all those issues on the North Platte, the state of Wyoming felt like it was a kind of a state's responsibility to step up and try to reduce any negative impact to any water users on the North Platte associated with the endangered species requirements. And initially that was 400 and some thousand acre feet. It's been ratcheted down quite a bit. So that's how that account came about. And the reason that you see the language the way it is drafted in that amendment is because it was a contract for that water out to 2035 between the state and the city of Cheyenne. And so the way you have all that 10-year language of not using it and all that was the way that our legal staff worked with the city of Cheyenne to come up with a mutual reason as to why we can terminate that contract, because we couldn't unilaterally as a state just cancel it. There was no provisions in that contractual agreement where the state could have just walked off and said, City of Cheyenne. So they come up with that language that if you haven't used it in 10 years, we'll revisit it, which we haven't. The state has not exercised any sales out of that. We've been paying $25,000 a year in that Seminole Reservoir account that we have not been marketing any water, and primarily because we did the Pathfinder modification project. So that's the first part of the question. The other part of the question is, what's the implications on the Colorado? Dovetails into the discussion so in all likelihood, there was federal legislation passed a little year and a half ago that give the states the opportunity to get free space in the Colorado River storage reservoirs. I won't go into all of that, but as part of that, the upper basin states and the upper Colorado said they would explore what we call a demand management program, which is an actual reduction of consumptive use. So if you got a water right, you're going to quit using it under a voluntary compensated program. So what's all that mean? So you could either go down that road, which the state engineers has been working with the University of Wyoming, with all the irrigators, municipal users, and our big industrial users in the Colorado River Basin to determine if that's a better way to go down, or whether we'd be better off facing a curtailment, which is basically it's priority appropriation. Last guy in, first guy out. How all that implicates Cheyenne is within the Green River Basin, they have a very late water right, 1969 to 1980. So they would be one of the very first entities that were regulated off of the system. So that would basically deny them the ability to divert any water whatsoever. Similarly, for some of the other municipalities, Rock Springs, Green River, and some of the heavy industry are very late water rights. So takes a lot of water to mine Trona, takes water to run a coal-fired power plant. So it is a giant issue that we are grappling with. Is right now, are we going to try to do voluntary curtailment compensated through some type of program where we pay people? Who pays? How much do you pay? Or is the state of Wyoming better off just going through a curtailment? Those discussions are ongoing between the governor's office, all the water users in the Colorado. Cheyenne's a big player because they're going to be one of the first ones that would actually get turned off under a curtailment, or potentially under a demand management program, have to go spend more money to pay somebody else to turn off so they could still continue to have municipal water here in Cheyenne. I hope that answers a question of the good senator from Fremont County.
Senator Wasserberger.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a quick question for the good senator from Carbon County. I'm worried about future appropriations, and the money that we use for our water account 1, 2, and 3 comes from severance tax distribution. And my question is, if we see a lessening of the collection of our mineral severance tax, are we going to see less funds flowing into these 3 accounts?
Madam Chairman,
Senator Hicks.
the potential is yes, but the way that's currently structured, the first $150 million of severance taxes, which is what we call under the cap, is distributed out, and I don't have the distribution formula. Some of it goes to your county roads. I think there's some goes to some schools, and I don't have that for me, but that 150 million then has a percentage, is percentaged out to quite a few different entities. Water development gets somewhere between 12 and 14% of that goes into these accounts. So if we dropped below $150 million, those accounts would take a pro rata currently. It would be assumed, it's not specific in the legislation, there would be a pro rata reduction in those funds available. Keep in mind, 4 years ago, we did already put one agency, the Board of Control, which has a $14 million a year budget onto Water Development Account 2 to try to reduce the impact to the general fund. So there's a couple of ways that we could potentially handle that. You could shift more expenditures off the general fund like we did with the Board of Control onto this account, or you could just reduce them on a pro rata basis, whether we chose to, if the money wasn't there or if the legislature decided that they wanted to change that. But so the potential is there, but there are solutions that are available, quite a few of them, in fact, that we could explore.
Thank you. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just a little bit of additional context. I'm on page 21 of our most recent budget book. And in fiscal year 2020, we received a little over 500 million in severance taxes. So we're still pretty far off, even in a year that maybe would have already felt some impacts from the virus and the resulting economic fallout. So just a little bit of context for the Senate as to where we're at, and still pretty far away from that 155 million cap.
Further discussion on the bill? Seeing none, sensing you're ready for the question.
Whoa.
Oh, sorry.
Senator Landon has his hand up.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Landon.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I want to go back to the Red Tiger country over in Niobrara and ask if I could get a little bit more on that Niobrara project. I was interested in the fact that the city of Cheyenne is also involved in the description of that project, and then also interested in what is behind the decision for the state of Wyoming to sell a water right. Can I get just a little bit more of an explanation on that project? Thank you.
Senator Hicks.
So, Madam Chairman, I can answer part of that question. The other one, my feeble failing brain is not recalling. But through the groundwater exploration program, and particularly for municipalities, what the state does is they'll go out and do the exploration to see what the groundwater, and they do that at 100% of the state's cost. And so, because if you end up with a dry hole, it's pretty hard to hang that on, municipal water users or residential water users. So typically what happens is the state will go out, hire a firm, drill a well. If it then becomes a well and a good well, then they allow the entity, whether it's a municipality or a water or sewer district, to buy that well back from the state. And so that's how that groundwater exploration program, and that's what this is the state had went and drilled the well, was determined it would make a good well. So my recollection is now that there's an entity has come in and decided to buy that from the state of Wyoming, for which its original purpose was. Now, why the city of Cheyenne is in that I can't recollect on that, but I can certainly find that answer out for you, Senator, by the time we get to second reading. So let's, if that's acceptable, we'll get that answer for you and get that back to you on the second reading.
Further discussion on the bill? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question, I think, is a follow-up. On page 25, 26, just the gentleman who described the bill for us or presented it mentioned we would sell a well to somebody. I'm wondering if that's customary, and I'm also wondering if the explanation given by Senator Hicks explained that as well. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I did not catch the page numbers and the project. If I could have that, I'll try to do.
Senator Hutchings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Vice President, it was around page 25, 26. He went through it really fast and he mentioned that we will sell the well to somebody. And I was just wondering, was that customary on the bill 25, 26?
Okay. Senator Wasserberger.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I believe we are talking about the Lands Creek well that the good senator from Carbon County was discussing just previously in the question from the good senator from Natrona County.
Very good. Thank you.
Further discussion on this bill? Senators, I don't see any hands up.
Question.
Question being called. All those in favor of Senator Boner's motion that when the committee whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 44, please raise your hand. On the screen, I see almost unanimous. Please put your hands down. All those opposed, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands up. The House Bill 44 has passed committee of the whole.
Madam Chair?
Senator Driscoll, Mr. President.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have to take care of a couple of reports, so we'll refer to the Majority Floor Leader as to where he'd like to take us on that.
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. President, I move that Mr. President, I move that the committee of whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Motion is passed. We'll stand at ease until the sound of the gavel.
Madam Chief Clerk, are you on?
Yes, sir.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
That last motion isn't that motion made to the chairman of the committee of the whole and not the president? Right. Yeah, you're in committee of the whole, Mr. President.
Hey,
you're in committee of the whole. You're just the senator. You're not a president.
I just had this gavel here. Had this gavel here and thought I'd control the world. Okay. Thank you.
It's not working now. I can't hear it talk.
Mr. President, can you turn off the former president's mic? I hear a rattling noise.
Mr. President, did you want to gavel us back in?
Well, it's kind of complicated. We're technically still in committee of the whole, I think.
We are.
So it actually would be Senator Ellis that should gavel us back in. Then let's have the motion on the majority floor leader's, or the vote on the majority floor leader's motion, and let's get back out, and then you can do business.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Okay.
The whole will come back to order.
Thank you. We'll turn it back over to the committee of the whole chair. Senator Driscoll, in committee of the whole chair, it's all yours.
Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of whole rise and report.
Do you want to do that?
Is that what we want to do?
Nope.
Okay.
Timeout. Point of order.
Senator Case.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader and Madam Chairwoman, we just want to get out of committee of the whole for a little while and then come back in. So beg leave to rise and sit again.
That's what we did, Senator Case. That was what
We
I
didn't vote on that, Mr. Majority Floor Leader. That's kind of we didn't actually vote on it.
Okay.
So we need to actually vote on that, and then the president would take over, and then we deal with Senate business, and then at the proper time we can go back in with another motion from you, sir.
I'll entertain a motion from Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the committee of whole beg leave to rise and sit again.
Righty, senators, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. All those opposed, please raise your hand. The motion carries.
Now, Mr. President.
Thank you. We do have some standing committee reports to be read in. Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, February 3rd, 2021, your committee number 1, Judiciary, to whom was referred House Bill 35, Theft Statute Amendment, respectfully reports same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting aye, Senators Cooper, French, Cole, Cost, and Nethercott. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman. Mr. President, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom was referred Senate File 52, Insurance, Mental Health, and Substance Use Parity, respectfully report same back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do pass. Voting ayes, Senators Baldwin, Bouchard, Furphy, and McCune. Voting no, Senator Hutchings. Signed, Senator Baldwin, Chairman. That completes the reports, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Floor Leader.
Mr. President, I move the Senate resolve itself into committee of the whole.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Senator Ellis, it's back to you.
Okay, the committee of the whole will please come to order. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 35, Theft Statute Amendment. The reading clerk will read the House bill.
House Bill 35, Theft Statute Amendment, an act relating to crimes and offenses sponsored by Judiciary. It was referred to Committee number 1, Judiciary, who returned a recommendation that it do pass back to the Senate. Voting aye, Senators Cooper, French, Cole, Cost, and Nethercott. Signed, Tara Nethercott, Chairman.
Thank you. You have heard the reading of the bill. What is your pleasure, Senator Nethercott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I move that when the committee of the whole rises to report it, do so with the do pass recommendation of House Bill 35, Theft Statute Amendment. Good senators, this is an incredibly complicated bill that does one thing, and it reinserts the word or. You may recall me mentioning this bill coming before the body based on the work that we did last year. In 2019, the Joint Judiciary Committee did a robust overhaul of Wyoming's theft statutes. There were no substantive changes made to that law. It just restructured how those crimes fit into the green books, making them more accessible and user-friendly for those needing to access them. There was an amendment in the other body that inadvertently deleted the word or from the bill, resulting in catastrophic impact to the state. From the time the law passed until now, there really has been an inability for prosecutors across the state to prosecute this crime as a result of the deletion of the word or. Or in a criminal statute, and in most of our laws, under the rules of statutory construction, means or. It means all of the things that are listed don't have to happen together. They can happen separately. And so that's really important when there's different types of crimes associated with theft. That's the bill in a nutshell. We are correcting a clerical error that occurred last year on a third reading amendment from the other body that was not caught by anyone associated with the legislature. And so this bill corrects that error and reinserts the word "or" in order to make the crime of theft prosecutable in the state of Wyoming. I strongly urge and ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Chairman Nethercott. Senator Hicks.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, I see in the other body, they amended page 2, line 4 by striking out the word knowingly. And so I'm assuming that that means even if you inadvertently used, received, conceal, or abandon any of those things, that now you could be prosecuted under the law. Could you explain the ramifications of striking the word knowingly?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I believe that there were a significant amount of efforts in the other body to deal with the bill. I think it's a mistake to strike the word knowingly. I think they overthought it potentially. But if you can see to not discuss too much of the other body, they actually undid what they originally did and took the bill back to its original state, to the version you see, where it just adds the word "or" back in. So I think maybe took a very, very simple bill, which can always be dangerous when it's just so simple, and overthought it and caused more harm than good, realized that, backed it up, and took the bill back to its original state, which is just the simple bill draft of adding the word "or" back in. So a lot of effort went into the bill over there to get it back to where it originally started, which is what should have happened in 2020. But here we are again in 2021. So the bill only does the "or." The word "knowingly" is important as it adds specific intent, which is certainly an element critical for the prosecution of theft, which is how the law currently reads and what's required.
Ready. I think I saw Senator Rothfuss. Did you have your hand up?
Madam Chairman, I was just going to point out that there is no engrossed bill, that as the good chairwoman noted, no changes were made by the House in net effect. So,
Senator Case.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I was just wondering if our friends down the hall knowingly did all this.
Madam Chairman, no.
Further discussion on this bill? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion to adopt, all those in favor of Senator Nethercott's motion that when the Committee of the Whole rises to report that it do so with a favorable recommendation of House Bill 35, please raise your hand. Okay. Please put your hands down. All those opposed, please raise your hand. Madam Chief Clerk, I don't see any hands raised. The motion has passed. And just for a point of clarification before we proceed, Madam Chief Clerk, would it be beneficial to read the list of bills that have been placed on the whiteboard? I'm having difficulty seeing those right now. Senator Driscoll. I can't hear you, Senator.
That will be a second reading list after we've taken action coming up.
Okay.
Gun a little bit, and I will read it when we get ready here. So.
Okay. So the next bill for our consideration is House Bill 52. Will the reading clerk please read in the House bill?
Madam Chairwoman, I believe that completes Committee of the Whole.
My apologies, Madam Chair. I thought I heard one more bill in there. All righty. I don't have any other bills for our consideration. Senator Driscoll.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Committee of the Whole rise and report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? The motion passes.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
you, Mr. President. Quick explanation to the body. This is what we did on day one. We're back to suspending rules, so we allow the two bills that we just.
Mr. President, point of order.
Go ahead, Senator Perkins.
We need to close out and finish off our committee of the whole work by reading the report and then approving the report, Mr. President.
Madam Chief Clerk.
Actually, Mr. President, you need to ask the chairman to read the, yes, never mind. I'll just shut up now. Thank you.
Madam Chief Clerk, read the report.
Mr. President, your Committee of the Whole, having had under consideration bills on general file, begs leave to report as follows. House Bill 44 engrossed, do pass amended. House Bill 35, do pass. Signed, Senator Ellis, Chairman.
Mr. President,
Madam Chair.
Mr. President, I move the adoption of the Committee of the Whole report.
Heard the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Thank you. Now, Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're back on track. So back to where I was at.
Mr. President, I really hate to do this again, but you need to announce that the motion carried so that we can move on. Sorry.
All right, that's okay. The motion has carried. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
All right, I'm trying hard this time. So we're back to where we were at early on. Fellow senators, what we're trying to do is ask for the rules to be suspended so that we can accelerate from Committee of the Whole to second reading today on the two bills that we just handled. This is not a normal procedure, but it'll allow us to get all our bills on second and allow us to do conferences tomorrow and Friday. So what this does, we just suspend the rules. It will move it up with the bills we just heard. Will be up on second reading with the other group from yesterday. And we go on to normal third reading tomorrow as is. So we encourage you to vote yes on the motion. Mr. President, in accordance with SR 1-3, I move the Senate suspend its Senate Rule 7-4, which states bills shall be read a second time at least one day after the Committee of the Whole reports on a bill having a due pass recommendation. The purpose of this suspension is to allow us to accelerate today's Committee of the Whole bills to a second reading. Following bills will be accelerated: House Bill 35, Theft Statute Amendment, and House Bill 44, Omnibus Water Bill Construction.
You've heard the motion pursuant to SR 1-3, suspension of the Senate rules. Requires a 2/3 vote of the members duly elected. This motion is not debatable. Would the Chief Clerk please call the roll?
On the suspension, Anderson excused. Baldwin.
Aye.
Aye. Beitman.
Aye.
Aye. Boner.
Aye.
Aye. Bouchard.
Aye.
Aye. Case.
No.
No. Cooper.
Aye.
Aye. Driscoll.
Aye.
Aye. Ellis.
Aye.
Aye. French.
Aye.
Aye. Furphy.
Aye.
Aye. Guru.
Aye.
Aye. Hicks.
Aye.
Aye. Hutchings.
Aye.
Aye. James.
Aye.
Aye. Kinski.
Aye.
Aye. Kolb.
Aye.
Aye. Cost.
Aye.
Aye. Landon.
Aye.
Aye. McCune.
Aye.
Aye. Nethercott.
Aye.
Aye. Pappas.
Aye.
Aye. Perkins.
Aye.
Aye. Rothfuss.
No.
No. Salazar.
Aye.
Aye. Schuler.
Aye.
Aye. Scott.
Aye.
Aye. Steinmetz.
Aye.
Aye. Wasserberger.
Aye.
Aye. President Dockstetter.
Aye.
Aye. Closing vote. Closing. Vote close. 27 aye, 2 no, 1 excused.
By your vote of 27-2, SR 7-4 is suspended for the purpose of accelerating the aforenamed Senate files to second reading. Bills on second reading. House Bill 9, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 9, Short Time Compensation Program, sponsored by Minerals.
There is an amendment. Will the reading clerk read in the amendment?
House Bill 9, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy.
Senator Hicks, you have the amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I am going to withdraw this amendment. Second reading, we're still waiting from a little bit of information from the agency that I want to clarify that the 5-year requirement to run the program, that it doesn't interfere with that. But based on any clarification there, I would like to potentially bring this back for a third reading amendment tomorrow.
Right. First reading amendment, first reading amendment, and second reading, first reading amendment to House Bill 9 has been withdrawn. House Bill 9 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 13, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 13, Alcoholic Beverage Regulation, sponsored by corporations.
There are no amendments. House Bill 13 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? The hearing no objection, it is.
Excuse me, Mr. President. There is an amendment on House Bill 13.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't have it on my list. There's an amendment. Will the reading clerk read in the amendment?
Certainly. House Bill 13, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 6, line 8.
Senator Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for adoption of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 13. Folks, this is just kind of a cleanup. It is on page 6, line 8. We changed adults to adult. On page 9, line 7, delete on-site and insert on-site. Just eliminates a hyphen. Page 24, line 5, delete adults and insert adult, same thing. 26, line 19, delete area and insert areas. Page 28, line 14, after permits and insert under this subsection. And page 29, line 7, after permits, insert under this subsection. Just to clean up, I would stand for questions during your adoption of this amendment.
Discussion on the amendment. Discussion on the amendment. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye with your hands. And those opposed. Madam Chief Clerk.
No opposed, Mr. President.
Thank you. We're back on the bill. House
Mr.
Bill.
President, there is a second amendment.
So there is, right on my desk right now. Would you read in the amendment?
Certainly. House Bill 13, second reading amendment number 2 to engrossed copy, page 13, line 18.
Either Senator Kolb or Senator Nethercott. Which one? Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. President. We withdraw that amendment at this time. It's not prepared, and you'll see a revised amendment come back on 3rd.
Thank you. The amendment has been withdrawn. Seeing no further amendments, we are back on the bill. House Bill 13, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 15, second reading of the Senate, or excuse me, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 15, Department of Transportation Communications Facilities, sponsored by corporations.
There is an amendment. Would the chief clerk read in the amendment?
House Bill 15, second reading amendment number 1, page 2, line 6.
Senator Case.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Mr. President, I want to thank Senator Hicks for bringing this to our attention yesterday. It had to do with language in the bill relating to who owns these communications facilities. And as the bill had been amended, it took out an or facility that was in the old language that so that the bill read, the Wyoming Department of Transportation may lease excess capacity on any state-funded communication infrastructure owned by the Department of Transportation to the telecommunications company. You know, in the old language in the law, it said state-funded communications infrastructure or a facility owned, and they had an or in there that kind of gave some wiggle room. Truth is, exactly as the good senator pointed out yesterday, these are actually owned by the state of Wyoming. They're not owned by the department. So that's what the purpose of the amendment is, to strike the word owned and insert operated. It's a good catch. It makes things super smooth. The department is okay with this, and I ask for your favorable consideration. And if I did move it, I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 15.
Thank you. Good follow-up on that, Senator Case. Any questions for the sponsor of the amendment or the discussion on the amendment? There appears to be none. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 15, please say aye. Any opposed? Oh, we'll click. Chief Clerk, did you get that? Let's see if there's any opposed.
No opposed, Mr. President.
All right. Senator Case, did you have a follow-up?
No, sir. I was just tripping up on my words.
Thank you. Okay. All right. House Bill 15.
Mr. President?
Senator Perkins.
Mr. President, there's a second reading amendment to House Bill 15.
I don't have it, but at this point, Chief Clerk, would you read the second reading amendment?
Certainly.
Mr. President, point of order.
Senator Case.
I don't see it in the proposed amendments. I see that there was a House amendment, but I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it either, but let's wait a moment for the Chief Clerk.
And I guess I would point out that if we're not seeing it on the,
I see it
where is it?
under amendments with the bill.
Wait. Okay, everybody just.
Hope you know it. It's yours, Senator Case.
Let's order back to the Senate here, and let's follow up with Senator Perkins and then Senator Landon.
Mr. President, you may have to for people who aren't seeing it, they may need to refresh their tab. Just go out and come back and see if it shows up.
Thank you. I've got a little help on the floor here. We've got it.
I have
Yes.
it, Mr. President, as
Okay.
well.
Let's do this, folks. Senator Landon, did you want to say something before we have it read in? Okay, thank you. So, Madam Chief Clerk, would you read in the second amendment?
I'd love to. House Bill 15, second reading amendment number 2, page 2, line 23.
Okay, I have Senator Perkins as the prime sponsor. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 15 and ask the body for the body's favorable consideration. What this does, and I shared this with, I'm pretty sure I shared this with Senator Case last night. I've slept since last night, so sometimes I get confused about what I did the day before. But what we did, we had this discussion in kind of after this bill came out. What the bill does, it sets up a new account in which these funds are deposited, and as we thought about that, we thought, why not just, since particularly at the beginning when this is not a significant amount of money that was anticipated in the fiscal note, like $3,500, What this does is just allows them to put this in the Department of Transportation's internal service account, and then simply account for it separately so that we can keep track of this and monitor it. But this is just an attempt to avoid having one more account in the system, and to just simply, hopefully it simplifies a little bit that both of the operation and over time. And that's the purpose of the amendment. And I would ask for the body's favorable consideration. Would be more than happy to answer any questions.
Questions for the sponsors? Senator Case.
Mr. President, thank you. This is perfectly acceptable and is a good addition to the bill, and I encourage us all to support it. And thank you. The bringer of the amendment did mention it to me last night. I just didn't, it wasn't up on the board yet. So
thank you.
Perfectly good with it.
Very good. There's a lot going on this morning, and we appreciate everybody's patience. Question being called on second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 15. All those in favor, leave them up a little bit for the chief clerk. Those opposed?
0 opposed, Mr. President.
Thank you. All right. I believe we are back on the bill now.
Do you want to declare that
Yes, that is
amendment
passed. Yes. Second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 15 has passed. Let's go back now to the bill. House Bill 15, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 18, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 18, Military Training Memorial, sponsored by Transportation.
There are no amendments. At least I don't think there are. Nothing showed up. All right. House Bill 18, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 25, second reading of the House Bill. Chief Clerk, read the bill.
House Bill 25, Tribal Vehicle Registration Exemption Implementation, sponsored by Select Tribal Relations.
There are no amendments. House Bill 25, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Bill 27, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 27, Business Code Revisions, sponsored by corporations.
There are amendments. Chief Clerk, read those.
Yes, sir. House Bill 27, second reading amendment number 1, corrected copy, page 6, line 3.
And we have Senator Perkins on that. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1, House Bill 27, and ask the body's favorable consideration. Mr. Chairman, this arises out of some concerns and questions I had about the bill yesterday. Just for a little bit of background, one of the things that happens is not only the statute with respect to service of process, not always, but often and most commonly, service of process is when someone's being sued. And so when that happens, when a person's being sued, you deliver what's called the summons, and then the complaint or the petition or application, whatever it might be, on the in this case a business entity. That one of the situations that we have is that in the event there's a section not only in the statute but what in the rules of civil procedure about service and how you comply with service. And one of the things that's allowed under Rule of Civil Procedure number 4 is service by delivery upon the Secretary of State as provided by statute. And so certainly we're providing for that by statute, but then you go to Rule 5 when it's talking about service of papers, and it allows for electronic delivery in two events. One is if you send it by mail and then concurrently provide electronic delivery, that works. But the purpose of enlarge the purpose of this amendment to allow a further electronic delivery. So also in Rule Civil Procedure 5, it allows for delivery by other means to which in this case the business entity or in any other case which a party has consented in writing to using that method of delivery. So what this does is it goes in and in section in the statute, I think it's what is it? It's 1728-101, and creates a new language that by signing, you see what here, by signing and certifying and submitting the form required under this subsection to the Secretary of State, each registered agent shall be deemed to have consented in writing on behalf of the business entity for which they serve as registered agent, for the business entity to accept service by electronic means as provided by 1728-104. And so what we're doing there is trying to make sure that we're covered under Rule 5 so that they have now, so that the business entity has consented to delivery of the papers from the Secretary of State in this manner. So going back and just to recap, what's happening is you can't find the defendant for the lawsuit because they don't have a registered agent or they don't have a registered office. They don't have an employee. You can't find anybody in the state to serve. So now you can serve the Secretary of State. That's fine. We know how to do that. But now this in turn will allow the Secretary of State then to convey and provide that on to them by electronic service. That's the intent. So we don't, hopefully it will not confuse judges and individuals as they look for service and have people come back and challenge the fact that they never got the papers. And so this is an attempt to solve that issue. And so I think that this will help. It just resolves an issue that I don't think you would be aware of unless you were an attorney and had seen and struggled with this before. So anyway, Mr. President, I'd ask for the body's favorable consideration. Would be more than happy to answer questions. And if there's improvements to be made, I'm more than happy to work with anyone on a third reading amendment to this to fix this or help this further. Thank you, Mr. President.
We're on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 27. Is there further discussion? Questions? Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the Chairman of Appropriations for providing his expertise in crafting this amendment. It seems like it addresses the concerns that were voiced yesterday in Committee of the Whole. I'd just like to give the Senate an update. Also, in talking with the Secretary of State's office, apparently they serve all of about 11 different people last year on this. So this isn't a make or break provision of the bill. Remember, the idea is that they're trying to cut costs. And without getting into too much trouble, hopefully, Mr. President, you'll allow me some leeway. There's a second reading amendment that would just eliminate this electronic option entirely. So 6 one way, half a dozen the other, Mr. President. Certainly, depending on the outcome of this amendment, I may withdraw my second amendment coming up after this one. Just want to make sure I give the body an update that this is not a hill that the Secretary of State's office wants to die on one way or the other. That being said, I do appreciate the good work from our appropriations chair to find a workable solution to keep this provision intact.
All right, we've prefaced our next process a little bit, but further discussion for Senator Perkins to answer. Further discussion or questions? Question on the amendment. All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 27, please say aye with your hand. Those opposed? Madam Chief Clerk? No opposed.
None opposed, Mr. President.
First reading amendment on House Bill 27, second reading is actually passed. Let's proceed now. Senator, would you read in the next amendment if that's still part of our process here then? Or Senator Boner, what's your thoughts? Okay, go ahead and read it in.
House Bill 27, second reading amendment number 2, delete the.
Thank you. Senator Boner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll withdraw second reading amendment number 2 at this time and circle back with our appropriation chair, see if there's anything more that we need to do on third reading.
Second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 27 has been withdrawn. We are back on the bill. House Bill 27 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 30, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 30, Public Utility Assessment, sponsored by Revenue.
There are no amendments. House Bill 30 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Bill 35, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 35, Theft Statute Amendment, sponsored by Judiciary.
House Bill 35 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 44, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 44, Omnibus Water Bill Construction, sponsored by Select Water.
House Bill 44 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered.
Mr. President.
Senator Boner.
Oh, I apologize. Never mind.
Okay, no problem. House Bill 44 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. House Bill 45, second reading of the House bill.
House Bill 45, Changes to Water Right Notice Requirements for Hearing, sponsored by Select Water.
There is an amendment. Would the Chief Clerk read in the amendment?
House Bill 45, second reading amendment number 1, to engrossed copy, page 2, line 3.
Thank you. Senator Boner.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. Now I'm up. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45. Fellow senators, what this amendment does, this is at the advice of staff. It cleans up the bill a little bit, and basically the intent is that right now the bill reads that, remember we're talking about diversions, and if 20 or more owners or appropriators of the users of the district facility require notice of a hearing if that's going to be diverted. Right now it requires the board, the state engineer or the board of control to determine whether there are at least 20 owners. The feeling is that either there's 20 owners or there aren't. It's a pretty basic fact. So it just cleans up the language, and I'll just go ahead and read what the new language would be with the amendments. If there are at least 20 owners of appropriations or owners of or users of ditches or facilities who require notice of the hearing, in lieu of requiring notice by certified mail with return receipt requested, the petitioner may provide notice of the hearing by regular mail and publication. So it doesn't change really the intent. It does clean up the language to do what I think we're all discussing. So it doesn't require there to be a determination by the board. Simply there are 20 users that are affected or there aren't. And so that's the idea behind the amendment, meant to clean up the language and provide the actual process to function a little bit more smoothly. So certainly stand for any questions on this amendment.
Second reading amendment number 1 to
Mr.
House Bill
President.
45. Senator Scott.
Mr. President, I think this might be a little more than cleanup. Mr. President, and I'm going to ask, was the state engineer, the Board of Control, consulted at all on this? The problem is that, at least in my experience, the records as to how many owners there really are tend to be a mess. And in the ones I've seen, they often don't take into account where there's been a change in ownership of some of the land, and you may have several different owners issued for one that is really only got one owner. And I think it may cut the other way too. Knowing how many there are is not necessarily a trivial exercise. And I think the bill as written may be written as it is for a reason. and you may need to have the state engineer or the Board of Control consult the local water commissioner to know how many owners there really are. It's not as cut and dried as you might think it is.
We go back to the sponsor. Further questions or discussion? Further questions or discussion on the amendment? Senator Boner, back to you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. So the idea is that, let's see. It should be a fairly straightforward finding of fact, whatever the process is that the state engineer or the state board of control uses to determine whether there's at least 20 owners or not. It doesn't really, from what I read, put any restraints as to how they go about doing that. All it's saying that they're not going to have a hearing to do so. So it's I can double check and make sure that the Board of Control and the state engineer was consulted. It does change the process. Yeah, it's more than just a technical amendment. I admit that, absolutely. It's meant to make the process work a little bit more smoothly, and just recognize the fact that, yeah, I'm not sure if we want to introduce that concept into our water laws, that, you know, whether there's an owner or not is a notion of ambiguity. I don't think there should be any ambiguity in that. We should at least in the way our statute series, we should have some confidence that we should know factually whether there's at least 20 or not. So that's the reason for the amendment.
So Senator Hicks, Chairman of Select Water.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think Senator Scott's is actually spot on. The only way that you're going to find out whether there's 20 or more is the Board of Control or the state engineer's office is going to have to do a search of their water rights database to make that determination. It's very difficult for an individual to go in there and do that. And I think it would still be implied with the amendment, but it's not specific. And so rather than have a statute that's vague, what I would suggest that we do is maybe just at the bringer of the amendment, I do think it would behoove us to have the state engineer take a look. And I don't know if he has, but the way I read it now, it kind of shifts the burden of the responsibility on the petitioner to go make a determination whether there's 20 or less and 20 or more. And I can just tell you, it's a pretty arduous process to get in their database and actually make that determination. You're going to spend a lot of time navigating that. So I'd just like for the state engineer to have the opportunity to weigh in on that. But I'm not for or against it. I just think moving forward, it would be cautious to get their input on that. And maybe the good senator of Ag Committee has already done that, but I'd like to hear if he has or not. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Boner, follow up, or where would you like us to take this amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President, for my third time, apparently. Yeah, we 6 one way, half a dozen the other. We can vote up, vote down, I guess, and I can circle back with the state engineer. It's my understanding that they still go through a process, and we just want to make sure that they didn't have a separate hearing to determine what the number of owners. So it's just making that clear. It's not as if they're just going to magically know, whether there's at least 20 users or not. Or just making the concern was they'd have to have a separate hearing, a public hearing, and have a more arduous, drawn out process where they could just go through and determine what should be a basic fact using whatever methods they seem fit. But yeah, whether the amendment passes or fails, we'll definitely get more information from the state engineer and Board of Control to see if this amendment is an improvement or not.
Okay. This is warranted the further discussion for clarification. The sponsor has asked that we proceed then with the vote on it. So this is on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45. All those in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Those opposed? Chief Clerk.
Sorry, 7 in favor. It appears to have failed, Mr. President.
Okay, second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 45 has failed. There are no further amendments. So we are back on the bill, members of the Senate. House Bill 45, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Bill 53, second reading of the House Bill.
House Bill 53, invasive plant species, sponsored by agriculture.
There is an amendment. Would you read in the amendment?
House Bill 53, second reading amendment number 1 to engross copy, page 3, line 6.
Senator Boner.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 53. Ask for the body's favorable consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the result of some of our discussion we had on this bill on Committee of the Whole. There were concerns about the some of the implications for the notice requirements when it comes to the specialty management program. That is the second mill. It constitutes the second mill levy available to our local weed and pest boards. If you give me just a minute here, we'll see if I can't bring that up here. Okay, and so basically what it does is it goes in on page 5, line 10 of the engrossed copy, and there's some concern that you wouldn't get notice until after the decision was made, so it strikes all the language on line 10, so that 10-day notice requirement is reinserted, so you'll actually get the notice beforehand. And then we make it clear on lines 13 and 14 that you still have to publish in a newspaper. And then it clears up that if the board wishes to, it can use any other available means of communication to give notice. So still have that basic requirement, stipulates that they have other options if they feel the need, but that's up to the board. So hopefully that helps with some of the concerns about the notice that were discussed on Committee of the Whole. That's the amendment. And also there's just some wordsmithing there on page or lines 6 and 7 of the amendment. Make sure that the wording of the subparagraph 5 matches and was in subparagraph 4. So that's the amendment. Hope this alleviates some of the concerns that were discussed in Committee of the Whole. Certainly stand for any questions.
Questions for the sponsor? Questions for the sponsor? We are on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 53. Question on the amendment? All those in favor, say aye. Madam Chief Clerk, those opposed?
No opposed, Mr. President.
Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 53 as passed.
Mr. President.
Senator Boner.
Thank you, sir. And just there's a few more questions, one in particular dealing with that second mill levy that has problems to follow up with. And if you check your inboxes, senators, there's some good, more thorough follow-up with the discussion that we had on Committee of the Whole. But when it comes to that second mill levy, there's a question from the senator from Sweetwater County as to how many counties take advantage of that second mill levy. And the answer is 11. 10 of those have the full second mill levy, and there's one that's really close. It's like, 0.95 of the additional 1 mill levy. So I think that's important to understand. And I think there may be some confusion in the discussion yesterday. We're not raising the mill levy. That's not happening. So just make sure that we understand that of those counties that have elected to take that second mill levy, they're basically maxed out there, and there's not going to be any opportunity to further increase those mill levies in those counties with this special management program. So just want to make that abundantly clear. And if you have questions about the specifics, which counties have assessed that additional mill levy, that's in your inbox. So just like to give the body that update.
you, Senator, for the follow-up. All right, we're on House Bill 66. House Bill 66, second reading of the Senate of the House bill.
House Bill 66 engrossed 2021 large project funding sponsored by Natural Resource Funding.
There are no amendments. House Bill 66 having been read 2 separate times. The
President?
Senator Ellis.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we move on, I just wanted to make the body aware. I sent you an email. There was a question brought yesterday by the senator from Carbon County about how funds would be administered for weed control specifically. There is a resource management plan in place. Specifically, it'll be kind of an all hands on deck. There'll be a lot of agencies involved, including Wyoming Game and Fish, local weed and pest folks, as well as perhaps federal agencies. But right now, the Game and Fish might be called on to actually spray the weeds themselves, and they may hire contractors. At this time, we don't know exactly what will be needed on the ground to get after the weed problem, but that's what we know as of today. So just wanted to provide that additional information to the body. And if you have any questions, let me know.
Thank you. We could take a moment to see if there's a question. If there's not, there are no amendments. House Bill 66 having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. House Joint Resolution 1, second reading of the resolution. Madam Chief Clerk.
House Joint Resolution number 1, engrossed. Traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress treatments, sponsored by Transportation.
There is an amendment. Would the Chief Clerk read in the amendment?
House Joint Resolution 1, second reading amendment number 1 to engrossed copy, page 2, line 22.
Thank you. Senator Scott.
Mr. Chairman, I move adoption of the amendment. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, what the amendment does is it removes the references to the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Mr. President, the reason for that is I think it gets to be kind of dangerous when the legislature starts to try to practice medicine. It's not an area we have great expertise. We've done it a few times with requirements. I can think of some of the newborn screening and some of those things. We've tended to delegate those to professional bodies in more recent times. But in this case, we're endorsing a specific therapy, which is a novel one, which may be perfectly good and may not. The risk that you get in these healthcare areas is it gets to be great enthusiasm for some new thing. And you say, isn't it wonderful? It cures 80% of the cases. And then in a year or two, you find out some smart statistician really went to work on it, epidemiologist, and discovered, yeah, but if you hadn't given that, it had cured 90% of the cases. I don't know whether that's the case in this thing, but I think it's safer for us to stick to more generic recommendations. And that's what we're doing. We're saying we're endorsing in the language it's not amended, physical therapy and occupational therapy, which that covers a wide range of practices, Mr. President. And then we say, instead of specifying this one therapy, we say other therapies, so that we're not endorsing something specific where we really haven't seen the evidence that whether it works or not. And that's really outside our expertise, Mr. President. So I urge adoption of the amendment.
Questions for the sponsor, questions for Senator Scott? Senator Ellis.
Thank you.
And then Senator Salazar in that order.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, after looking at this resolution yesterday, I started thinking about just an instance in my own personal life. And someone very important in my family suffered from a traumatic brain injury. And I can tell you that it's a pretty life-altering thing for the families and the individual. And unfortunately, because of just the matters of the brain, there's a lot we know and a lot we don't know. And for the families and individuals who are trying to provide for some recovery options, I really feel like we shouldn't be limiting what's an emergent, what we know as established occupational therapies or other kinds of therapies from something that is emerging and that might provide opportunity for healing. And, so in reading about hyperbaric chambers, I mean, this isn't necessarily a new concept. It's been used to treat things on limited basis over the years, deep divers. But now, as I do some research, there are some leading health clinics across our country who are starting to look at potential benefits of hyperbaric chambers. And one of the possible ways effects they're looking at is specifically for traumatic brain injury. And so I agree with the good senator from Natrona County that Wyoming needs to be very cautious when it comes to endorsing something in our practice acts. But a lot of people across our country are receiving this treatment. It's sometimes covered through insurance, sometimes covered through Medicare and Medicaid. And so it isn't a completely novel form of therapy. I think the question is whether or not we want to open up that access for our veterans. And so for someone who's in this situation of having a traumatic brain injury, looking at traditional forms of therapy might not be enough. They might want to try this form of therapy in particular. And so in weighing the benefit of doing that with potential health risks, really this is putting a person in a compressed room where oxygen levels are very high. And so potential side effects could be pressure to ears and things like that. So certainly I think a medical care provider can make those determinations of whether or not it's a suitable therapy. But when you look at the overall risk, it's not like some awful experimental drug that might have disastrous side effects. It really is placing a person in a room with intense oxygen. And so weighing those risks, I think we owe it to our veterans to not only look at established therapies, but to look at emerging therapies such as this one. And so I would actually urge you to defeat the amendment and leave the bill as it is. I think that in its present form, it's trying to urge our Congress to be very open-minded rather than having a narrow view of what kind of resources they're going to make available to our veterans.
Senator Salazar and then Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the greatest respect for my education chairman, but I agree with the chair of TRW. It's my understanding that this language was in fact put in by or suggested by the Department of Defense as far as hyperbaric chambers. And, as someone who spent 26 years in the military, this bill is incredibly important. It's needed. And everyone that I've talked to since yesterday has repeatedly told me that, in fact, this language should stay in. I understand the cautions that we need to take with regard to what we're recommending on treatment, but I would agree with the chair of TRW that all options need to be open, and so I'm going to be voting against this amendment as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Florida Rothfuss, and then to Senator Landon in that order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, on for the amendment, and I think we have to be thoughtful about what our role as a legislature is and where we can assert authority and where we shouldn't assert authority. And the good former chairman of the Labor and Health Committee, I think, correctly identifies the fact that we're not a medical body. We do have, I think on my count, one credible medical expert in this chamber and 29 people that I wouldn't take a prescription for aspirin from. And that's fair, right? We've all got different expertise. So the idea that the chamber with no expertise would put forward advocacy for medical treatments that are not proven medical treatments. And I spent some time yesterday just reading journal articles, reading the clinical review trials, looking at what is out there because I was curious. I'd never heard about this before and just wanted to look into it. It's certainly not a decided matter. It is still in clinical trial. There have not been any supportive double-blind randomized trials that would conclusively say this is a good technology. And so, Mr. President, it seems to me that for us to advocate a solution, which is a medical solution, a medical technology that the experts through randomized clinical trials have not concluded is a medically effective technique, to me, that just steps beyond what we should do and what our role is. And honestly, I mean, this amendment for me personally is the key to whether or not I would support the legislation, because there's no way that I could cast a vote for an unproven technology. I wouldn't even want to cast a vote for a proven technology, but it's very clear that the underlying message of this legislation of the importance of effective treatments for traumatic brain injuries and PTSD is an important measure, and it certainly is within the realm of our policy discussion and what we should be advocating for. So, Mr. President, I'd certainly urge the chamber to be very cautious of what they want our role to be when it comes to making decisions that are better left to scientists, experts, and that expertise than to policymakers that have not been trained in this space. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Landon and then Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate the debate on this joint resolution. And, you know, let me just say first that I wish these resolutions had more impact. I'm afraid they probably don't have much impact by the time they get back to the Beltway or wherever they go. That said, I just have to respectfully disagree with my colleague from Albany County. What this resolution seeks to do is to simply push the envelope a little bit for our veterans. They already have access to all the therapies that are referenced in this amendment that we're considering right now. What the resolution says is we want these hyperbaric chambers to be included in their options. I too went out on the internet last night and did some homework. And I think we can find articles and review journals out there all over the place that can support any one of our viewpoints. Whether we're for or against this resolution, we can find positives and negatives. There seems to be some positives out there for some of our veterans who have suffered these life-altering situations with post-traumatic. So I'm going to resist the amendment. I think that it turns a resolution into almost a gummer. If we go with this amendment, all it says is just let our veterans access the normal therapies. That's not what I'm interested in. I want to push the envelope a little bit. Thank you.
Senator Steinmetz and then up to Senator Nethercott.
I can add much.
There we go. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. And I don't know that I can add much to what the good chairman of transportation said, except that we want to give our veterans every option to recover. And that's what this resolution is about. So against the amendment, for the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let's go Senator Nethercott and then Senator Schuler in that order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a clarifying question, because the entire resolution perplexes me. Is this resolution really at the request of the Department of Defense? Because they're not able to provide these types of treatments to their veterans? And forgive me if this has already been debated, but I am confused as to why we are legislating through resolution PTSD treatments, and will the Judiciary Committee be required to do one for other types of substances for medical purposes? I mean, I'm just worried about the pathway we're heading down. So maybe it was mentioned by the chairman that this is at the request of DOD, and I'm just curious about that.
Senator Schuler.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and against the amendment, I think the catchphrase really at the beginning of the bill kind of says it all for me. The idea is we're trying to expand and improve effort to treat PTSD and TBI. So we're really just looking for more ways to try to help our veterans. 22 veterans a day die from suicide, and I know My son is a former veteran, has had some of his buddies that have gone that route, who have had, issues with TBI and PTSD. So for me, right now, generally it's medication and counseling, exactly what the bill says. That's really pretty much how they treat it. Those things are great. But I think if there's something out there that I think might be better, and again, I've done some research on it, and I think there's some potential there for it to be very helpful. So on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Senator Landon, you may have an answer for us on that earlier question. Go ahead, Chairman.
Well, Mr. President, thank you. And my friend from Cheyenne, I think that's a very good question. And I have to admit that I'll have to try to dig a little bit deeper and catch up on all of the testimony that must have been taken throughout the interim. This was an interim bill by last year's Transportation Committee. The little bit of testimony that we did receive
Testimony, if we could just have Senator Kinski mute, please. Senator Kinski mute, please. Go ahead, Chairman Landon. Now we lost you, Senator.
You're muted, Senator.
Wrong person muted. Go ahead, Chairman Landon, unmute and proceed.
I'm not quite sure how I got muted. Thank you very much. Okay, let me kind of start over. When we hand the baton off to a new committee, that's a little bit challenging. And so I have to admit to you that I'm probably not as well versed on all of the testimony that occurred throughout the last interim as I could be. The little bit of testimony that we got in committee, fellow senators, did indeed, our military department spokesman did say that they're very supportive of this. I cannot recall, and maybe one of the members of last year's Transportation Committee could help us understand whether it was brought to the Transportation Committee by the Department of Defense. I am not aware of that. I will try to find that out for everyone. But I would just say this has a lot of support. I'll just try to, I've written it down, a couple of things, and I'll try to get back to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Steinmetz.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll take a stab at answering a couple of those questions. This was brought to us by a former Speaker of the House who is a military veteran who resides in my county of Goshen, and a veterans organization that he was working with. So it is coming from our grassroots veterans organizations that have requested this. They would like to be able to have these treatments covered through the VA. And so that is the impetus of this bill and resolution. And so that's where it came from, with all the best of intent to support our veterans and their ability to recover from these traumatic brain injuries. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the amendment? Oh, let's line them up. Senator Perkins, Senator Case, Senator McEwen, in that order, please. I saw the sponsor getting ready, but Senator Scott, give us a little bit of time. Senator Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. On and for the amendment. I struggled with this amendment yesterday, mostly because it asserts that it has been clinically proven that this treatment is beneficial. And from the little bit of research that I found out and I could find from independent sources on this, found that there may be some benefits, particularly those who may have suffer from severe, but not from, there's been some testing. Long story short, the jury's still out. You can find people who advertise this as a benefit to try and get people to come in for PTSD and other reasons. There you find others who haven't and have said and explained why that they don't, and it's because it hasn't been clinically proven. At the end of the day, and the bringer of the amendment, along with I and anybody else, I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that doesn't support veterans and wants to see veterans receive every chance and every opportunity that makes medical sense for them to try and improve their lives and get back functionality. There's nobody here who's opposed to that. But when I look at these, resolutions, I hearken back to our good friend, former president from and late senator from Sheridan County, as well as others. I mean, this is a resolution. It's going to go to somebody's round file in Washington, D.C. It's going to end up in a garbage can. Will somebody do it? Well, maybe. But even as the resolution cites itself, this has already been taken up and is being looked at. There's both bills in the House and Senate to move this forward. It's certainly on the radar. And the fact that 30 or 90 legislators from the state of Wyoming, I think one of whom probably has the medical expertise to even discuss this, supports this, I don't think has any bearing one way or the other. And if anything, I think my other concern is that this type of thing, with what I've read, may present false hopes. And so I think that's something you leave in the hands of the medical people. I think the VA has taken great steps in the last few years. And I think that to the extent that doctors feel this is appropriate, it is used in stroke. It is used to treat the bends. It is used. There are a number of therapeutic things and therapeutic instances where it is valuable and has been clinically proven. In this one, it may or may not be. And I'm uncomfortable supporting this resolution without this amendment. And it's unfortunate that this now has become, if this is a litmus test about whether or not we support our military, I just reject that premise. You could support the military and still have a common sense approach to what's in their best interest, and in a resolution that does that at the end of the day will do nothing. Except maybe make us feel good. I don't get it. I'm on and for the amendment. Because with it, and the amendment doesn't preclude the use of this treatment. It simply just doesn't specify it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We had two more. Who was next? Senator Case and then Senator McEwen. And I thought I heard a Kinski voice in there. Let's go, Senator Case.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I know who that former speaker was. He was my very first speaker in the legislature, and he's truly a hero and a great American, and he was a wonderful speaker, and he's a friend of mine. Mr. President, I don't even know how to get there, but when you're battling health problems, big ones, for example, if you have ever had cancer or fought cancer, and you would be amazed at the treatments that people suggest to you, some of which were in the realm of medicine and some that are a little farther out there. It's a big, huge continuum. And I think that we've kind of gone down the road here where we have a former member, a distinguished citizen in Wyoming, who's asking that we kind of put our thumb on the scale to get a treatment that might very well be helping him or colleagues he knows, and it might be helping, but it might not, Mr. President. A lot happens out there when you're fighting disease or struggling with disabilities, and what helps you is what you think helps you. And I'm not criticizing it. That is part of the way you get well, is to believe you're going to get well. I know that for a fact. But I know that this really isn't our space to decide and say, pay for this so that they can have it. I guarantee you, there are lots of people in the United States working on PTSD, traumatic brain injury. I think some of you know that the story of my brother, who died a terrible alcoholic after his service injury in Vietnam. It took a lot of years to accomplish that. I wish he would have got the help. I wish this would have helped him. I wish I could have helped him, frankly. But I'm telling you, this is not our space. We can't do this. And nobody's going to pay attention to it either. Really, they're not. This has kind of convinced me that I probably won't be supporting this resolution in the end, because it really is about trying to get funding to pay for a specific treatment that's not approved by the medical profession for this particular purpose and is being looked at. I want to let those experts look at it, make decisions, make recommendations. Lord knows, our government, we all want to have a successful treatment to prevent the horrible human and other medical costs of this. But that doesn't mean that we as the Wyoming State Legislature knows what that right treatment is. We're way out of our league on this one, Mr. President. So support the amendment.
Senator McEwen, and then we had Senator Kinski, and then we have Senator Landon, and then Senator Hutchings.
Mr. Chairman, I will tell you this as a 27-year combat vet, DOD is not doing anything. VA is not doing anything. Everybody kicks this down the road. I have a large group of soldiers in the Campbell County area. We get together every Sunday. I get phone calls at 2 or 3 in the morning. We've dug into this. The answer is give them more pills. The answer is send them to a counselor who doesn't even understand what's going on. And I get it. We want to blame DOD for this, and we want to back away because we're not doctors. That's fine. But at the end of the day, all we're asking with this is for something other than the usual. And I get it. Hundreds of people are searching out a new medication or some other way to make money instead of treat the problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kinski, and I believe it was Landon Hutchings in that order. You didn't have one? Okay.
I did not.
Okay, Senator Landon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you. It's been a really good debate, and I know we want to get to the sponsor of the amendment. I've reread the paragraph several times that indicates the clinically proven language, and honestly, I'm not certain that paragraph says that hyperbaric oxygen therapy has been clinically proven. I don't think that it really does. I think that it indicates that there have been other clinically proven therapies out there. And I just wanted to point that out with great respect to my friend from Natrona County. Have even more respect for the words from my good friend from Lander. I thank him for that. But you know, in the end, folks, I supported this resolution in committee. I'm going to support it out here. And I'm going to vote against this amendment because I think what the amendment would do would be to really strip out what we're trying to accomplish with the resolution, which is to ask the Department of Defense, the Veterans Administration, to push the envelope for our veterans a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hutchings, and then Senator Ellis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everything everybody has said, but it saddens me to hear that a joint resolution has no value. If they didn't have value, why are we drafting them? I see when I look at a House bill, a Senate file, I'm being asked to discern based on information given to me what way I should vote. We don't have expertise in a lot of areas that we vote yes in. This resolution is just offering an option. And if I look at page 4, lines 2 and 3, it's saying let's foster research and develop additional therapies. We want to open the eyes of our congressmen to this type of therapy, and that's it. If joint resolutions have no value, let's just stop them today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and against the amendment.
Thank you. Senator Ellis?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, I want to make it clear that I don't know that these work. You know, my loved family member who has, you know, had experienced this traumatic brain injury, the jury's out. There are people who try this therapy and don't think it works for them, and that makes sense. But there are people that try it and they do seem to think they have some value. And to, you know, the senator from Fremont County's point, I think that believing is an important component of a person's ability to heal. And you know, this resolution isn't binding, and my hope would be that we submit it to our congressional leaders and they take a good look at it, get a better understanding of what's happening within our Veterans Administration, and hopefully in that conversation they identify other ways that they can support veterans back home and identify barriers that are currently present. So I think there's value in this, but I do think that if we pass this amendment, it really guts the bill of what we're trying to get after, which is let's look at other therapies. And you know, I'm a cynic when it comes to just prescribing a new pill and a different pill. And this isn't a clinical trial for that. This really is just putting a person in a room with intense oxygen. And so again, you know, without a medical degree, and I know that I don't have that, you know, weighing that risk over maybe helping some veterans that this might help. To me, it just seems like we should defeat this amendment, ask our congressional members to take a look at it. And I think that on a third reading amendment, you know, if the bringers of this particular bill, or excuse me, of this second reading amendment want to soften the language, we can put in there that we're aware that this may be a therapy that's appropriate. We're asking for you to look at it. I think we can soften the language on a third reading amendment without gutting the entire intent. So I'd urge your defeat of this amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Mr. President, for my second time. And there has been good debate, but I think there's a couple of things that I'd really like to emphasize on for the amendment. And the first of those is that this research is already underway. I just pulled up clinicaltrials.gov. There's 136 recognized clinical trials for hyperbaric oxygen treatment therapies in a variety of areas, including for TBI and PTSD. So it's currently being studied. And again, this isn't new. There have been previous studies. On the previous studies, the idea that you can find people saying either way, there's no question there are folks out there that say this works, but the gold standard and what we need to contemplate and what the FDA contemplates when it's looking for opportunities to approve a use case for a particular therapy or treatment or drug is randomized trials that provide sufficient conclusive evidence of efficacy. So that's underway. That's the process that is currently under development. And if we get to the point where the FDA recognizes that there's efficacy here as a use case, that approval would then be granted. And if approval is granted, then you can rest assured that something like our particular resolution wouldn't be needed because it would be demonstrated as an effective therapy. But the concern is, and the reason we go down this road and have this process through the FDA and have clinical trials and have randomized trials so that we can discern instead of just narrative discussion about whether something's effective, but really understand how effective things are and how they compare to other treatment processes so that you can conclude whether it's effective, is that all of these things, Mr. President, have a cost associated with them. I just briefly looked up. It looks like it's about $500,000 to install one of these hyperbaric chambers for medical purposes. I don't know what the individual treatment cost is, but when you contemplate that there's a fixed pool of resources and funds available, and that we know we have individuals that need treatment and need resources, the idea that we would support taking away some portion of those resources and dedicating them to an unproven technology is detrimental to the interests of our veterans that need treatment. And it's irresponsible for us to be recommending unproven treatments and the use of resources where there is currently no evidence. I'd challenge any legislator to come up with a clinical trial that is randomized, that is peer-reviewed in a scientific journal, that shows that there was efficacy for the use case proposed. There certainly is efficacy, we know that, for hyperbaric treatment therapy. But there is not currently any conclusive evidence that indicates that you would have success in the use case. That may change, Mr. President. And if it does, we should support it. But if it does, the FDA will approve it. And that's the process that we adhere to. That's why we don't have snake oil salesmen anymore. That's why we don't have drugs that are not deemed safe and effective. And that's why we have this robust system of clinical trials and treatments and therapies that we enjoy, that we know is effective, and that has proven itself time and again. So, Mr. President, I really do continue to have a substantial amount of concern for the idea that we would be advocating to move against science, move against the FDA process, and recommend spending valuable resources on unproven technologies, which I think would be a disservice to our veterans. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Further discussion? Further discussion before we go back to the sponsor. All right, Senator Scott, you caught our attention this morning.
Mr. President, I had no idea I was going to touch off this length of a debate on this. Mr. President, everything's been said. I don't have a lot to add. I brought the amendment because I thought we were putting ourselves in a dangerous position for a legislature, taking a position on a medical issue that where a treatment has not been proved. And we all want to help our veterans. We all want to see them recover from the traumatic brain injuries they've had, from the PTSD. And the trouble with an unproven therapy like this, it ought to be researched, ought to be explored. But not only is there the cost issue, but the history of medicine has some number of instances where things were tried, were widely disseminated before they were proved, and proved to be dangerous. And that's a risk here too. So I think we just don't have any real expertise in this. Let's tame the resolution down a little bit and proceed with what we know we can advocate for. And it does advocate for access to a variety of treatments, improving their chance of their opportunities for healing. That we can advocate for, and I'll be confident in. This specific remedy, this is one place where actually the resolution might have some effect. Somebody who's trying to sell these therapies might well use it as evidence that it is effective. And we are not in the position to provide that evidence. So for all those reasons, Mr. President, I would urge us to pass the amendment.
All right. You've heard the motion being called. This is on second reading amendment number 1 to House Joint Resolution 1. And I ask that you will hold your hands up, that the chief clerk can get a solid vote count on this. When all those in favor say aye with your hand. Okay, Madam Chief Clerk, you good? All right, those opposed with your hand? No?
Thank you, Mr. President. I get a count of 11 ayes, 17 no.
11-17, the amendment has failed. We are back on the bill. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Joint Resolution 1 has failed. Now we're back on the resolution, House Joint Resolution 1, having been read 2 separate times. The question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. That concludes our second readings. Senator Rothfuss, before we go to thirds, would you like to do a re-referral?
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe Chairman Wasserberger, Acting Chairman Wasserberger, has those referral numbers and the referrals in front of him, so I would defer to Senator Wasserberger.
Thank you. Chairman Wasserberger.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that Senate File 36, for-profit public benefit corporations, be referred to the Corporations Committee.
Absent any objection, Senate File 36 has been referred to the Corporations Committee.
Mr. President,
Senator Wasserberger.
I would also move that Senate File 38, decentralized autonomous organizations, be referred to the Corporations Committee.
Chairman Wasserberger, double check that Senate file number again, just to make sure.
Senate File 38, decentralized autonomous organization.
Thank you. Absent any objections, Senate File 38 has been re-referred to corporations.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. With that taken care of, bills on third and final reading, final passage. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, do you have a consent list? Mr. Majority Floor Leader. You're muted, sir. Mr. Floor Leader.
I do, Mr. President. Third reading consent list, House Bill 3, Certified Addictions Practitioners Certification Amendments. House Bill 6, Trust Company Amendments. House Bill 8, Consumer Credit Amendments. House Bill 34, Youthful Offender Program Amendments. House Bill 42, Chancery Court Vacancy Amendments. House Bill 48, Community Juvenile Services Block Grant Program.
Thank you. Would anyone like any of these bills removed from the consent list? Any of the bills removed? All right. Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the Senate? House Bill 3, Certified Addictions Practitioner Certification Amendments. House Bill 6, Trust Company Amendments. House Bill 8, Consumer Credit Amendments. House Bill 34, Youthful Offender Program Amendments. House Bill 42, Chancery Court Vacancy Amendments. House Bill 48, Community Juvenile Services Block Grant Program. Chief Clerk will call the roll.
On the consent list, Anderson excused. Baldwin.
Aye.
Beitman.
Aye.
Boner.
Aye.
Bouchard.
Aye.
Case.
Aye.
Cooper.
Aye.
Driscoll.
Aye.
Ellis.
Aye.
French.
Aye.
Murphy.
Aye.
Guru.
Aye.
Hicks.
Aye.
Hutchings. James.
Aye.
Kinski.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
Cost.
Aye.
Landon. Landon.
Excused.
Excused. McCune.
Aye.
Nettercott.
Aye.
Pappas.
Aye.
Perkins.
Perkins, aye.
Perkins, aye. Rothfuss.
Aye.
Salazar.
Aye.
Schuler.
Aye.
Scott.
Aye.
Steinmetz,
Aye.
Wasserberger,
Aye.
President Dockstader.
Aye.
On the consent list, 28 aye, 2 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority.
Mr. President, I need to call the bills.
Please go ahead. Sorry.
House Bill 3. Are there any changes?
Perkins, no.
Perkins, no.
Case, no.
Case, no.
Kolb, no.
Cold, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 3, 25 aye, 3 no, 2 excused. House Bill 6, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 6, 28 aye, 2 excused. House Bill 8, are there any changes? Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 8, 28 aye, 2 excused. House Bill 34, are there any changes?
Case, no.
Case, no.
Perkins, no.
Perkins, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 34, 26 aye, 2 no, 2 excused.
Senator McEwen, no.
Too late.
Sorry, the vote was closed. House Bill 42, are there any changes?
Senator McEwen, no.
McEwen, no.
That's what I was trying to do.
House Bill 42.
Point of order, I thought I heard another change, and I believe it's Hutchings.
Hutchings, aye to no.
Hutchings, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 42, 26 aye, 2 no, 2 excused. House Bill 48, are there any changes?
Rothfuss, no.
Rothfuss, no.
Guru, no.
I'm sorry, say again.
Guru, I don't know.
Guru, no.
Case, no.
Case, no.
Cooper, no.
Cooper, no. Closing vote. Closing vote closed. House Bill 48, 24 aye, 4 no, 2 excused. That completes the bills, Mr. President.
Thank you. Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the Senate, Senate File 3, Certified Addiction Practitioner Certification Amendments, House Bill 6, Trust Company Amendments, House Bill 8, Consumer Credit Amendments, House Bill 34, Youthful Offender Program Amendments, House Bill 42, Chancery Court Vacancy Amendments, House Bill 48, Community Juvenile Services Block Grant Program have passed the Senate. Mr. Majority Floor Leader, what would you like us to do?
Lunch.
President, I don't think we're going to do lunch. We're going to finish up real quick. We can have a long lunch. So with that, unless there's anything else, Mr. President, I move we adjourn until 10 o'clock tomorrow, February 4th, and we'll go from there. Make the motion.
Okay.
Good motion.
Announcements? Senator Driscoll, go ahead.
Mr. President, your committee number 7, corporations, will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, and we will take up Senate File 15, Temporary License and Permitting Authority 2, Senate File 17, Governmental Publication Requirements, Senate File 28, Motor Vehicle Security Interest Perfection, and if time permits, Senate File 30, Pandemic Response Review Task Force, and Senate File 62, extending the sunset date of the Office of Community Advocate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further announcements? Further announcements? Senator Wasserberger.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your committee number 9, Senate Minerals, will meet Friday, February 5th at 8 a.m. to hear a report on drilling, the ban on drilling on federal lands, and a discussion by the governor of the state of Wyoming. All senators are invited. If you would like to attend, the meeting is by Zoom. Thank you, Mr. President.
Have you repeat that time again, please?
Mr. President, the time is 8 a.m. Friday morning, February 5th, 2021.
Thank you. Further announcements? Further announcements? All right, you've heard the motion. All those in favor, say aye with your hand. Opposed, no. Okay, we stand adjourned until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.